Hi everyone, sitting here with Bud Cox, as you all know from Adventure. And Bud and I are going to talk about the history of Adventure for a bit today. So Bud, what was the first start of Adventure in your opinion?
Well, it was the summer of 1966 when we had a plane crash. So in my opinion, that's when unknown to me at the time, that's when the idea started to develop. So there's a plane that crashed into, not the top of Double Top, but near the top of Double Top. The top, of course, has two tops. And the lower of the two tops, there was a couple hundred vertical feet above the lower of the two tops where the plane actually crashed. So at the time I was village chief of Lenape Village, which was the second oldest village. There were 5 villages of 5 cabins each back then, in 1966. And my village, Lenape Village, I was the village chief, and the boys were 12 and early 13s. So I was in cabin 19. I had 9 kids, no junior counselor. And the boys were all 12 and a couple early 13s. And we got word that the plane crashed on Double Top, and the Civil Air Patrol got permission to cross Frost Valley property to access the area. And we eventually heard that the Civil Air Patrol found it too rough to climb up Double Top. So the boys in my cabin decided that, well, that's what they wanted to do. Too rough sounded pretty good, sounded like a challenge, sounded like a real adventure. So prior to this event of climbing Double Top, I never really had much interest in camping or backpacking or bushwhacking. I loved bicycling. I went about 30,000 miles on a 2-speed bike built in 1929, a Columbia bike. And so that was my main interest at the time. However, the trip up Double Top changed me in many ways. So we went up Pigeon Brook. It was very, very rough. We picked a very bad way of going up. But, at least I felt we wouldn't get lost because we're following the stream most of the way up. So it's a lot of rocks. It's very hard hiking up the stream. We hiked all the way to the very end of Pigeon Brook. And then we took a bearing to get to the lower of the two tops. It was raining the whole time. It turned out to be a 3-night overnight. Prior to that, the longest any cabin ever stayed out was 2 nights. The older boys always stayed out for 2 nights, the younger ones 1 night. So this was the very first 3-nighter that anybody from Frost Valley ever took. There were lots of nettles, which are stinging plants, which made it a little more difficult, and the rain didn't make things any easier either. But I guess curiosity, that was the driving force. We wanted to see what we could find up there, see if we could find the plane. And we were all over the top, and we didn't find it. We did not find the plane the first time. So anyway, the very next session we planned another 3-night up Double Top to try to find the plane. And I think it was about the 3rd trip up there that we finally actually found the plane. It was a very small plane. I remember one wing was torn off, and it was, as I said before, a couple hundred feet below the actual top of the mountain.
And it's the same plane that's up there now, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, the porcupines are chewing on it, so there's a little less of it, I guess. Porcupines love to chew on planes that have crashed. So the next thing you know, I was planning a 4-night overnight, not up Double Top, but other areas in the Catskills. And then I remember we had a 5-night overnight. We ended up over in Bel Air Mountain. So we went to a lot of different places in the Catskills. And finally, it was in the fall of '67. I was at college at the time. And I thought to myself, how great it was to be camping and bushwhacking and hiking in the Catskills. And I thought, well, why do we bother with a 5-night overnight? Why don't we take a 14-day overnight and just stay out all the time? So I sat down and wrote up a proposal for what I called Adventure Camp in the fall of '67. And I took it over to Halby Brown's house. At the time, Halby Brown, who was our executive director for 35 years, he came in 1966. In fact, the first time I saw him was in August of '66 when he was, I guess, interviewing for the job, and that's the same month the plane crashed. So anyway, he lived in Scotch Plains, a couple blocks from where my parents were living, and of course during the college years I would come back and visit my parents. So got on my bicycle and went over a couple blocks to Halby Brown's house with my proposal, and Halby was very excited about it. He liked the idea. And the next thing you know, in 1968, we offered the Catskill Explorer program. There were 4 2-week programs, hiking and camping throughout the Catskill area.
And at this time, was it all boys?
It was all boys that first year.
Okay.
And then in 1969, we had girls. Girls stayed in 2 wall tents when they were on the campus. Those were down where the flying squirrel is in that area.
Yeah.
And the boys, they stayed in Pigeon Lodge, which is now down the creek. It got flooded out in 2011. We were on the 2nd floor. We'd be there for like 1 day, getting ready for the trips and packing up our food, and then we'd take off. And then the last day of the session, of course, we'd be back in those same facilities. 69, when the girls came to the Catskill Explorer program. And then 1970, they continued. The program continued a lot, expanded quite a bit. In 1971 and 72, we had the Adirondack Explorers. And we took a commercial bus to Newcomb, New York, which is in the geographical center of the Adirondacks. We had about 40 backpackers. We didn't have one group. We split up into smaller groups.
And did you go to the high peaks, or where were you going there?
I don't remember. We were all over the place. Certainly, we were in the high peak areas at times. The high peak area is an area that's greatly overused.
Right.
So we try to go to other areas. And of course, during those years, we also had other programs. We had the Outward Bound program, or not Outward Bound, Westward Bound. It was called Westward Bound. And that started in 1970, and it was a bus trip. It went out west and covered a lot of the national parks. And in that year, they went all the way out and they came all the way back. The same group went out and came back in the bus, and we found out it was way too much time in the bus. So the following year, we split it up, and we had one group take the bus out, and then that group took a plane back, and the second group took the plane out and brought the bus back. And then we had bicycle trips. They were very popular. They were the most popular trips at the time.
Where would those go?
We had a 4-week trip along the St. Lawrence River.
Oh, wow.
And we had 2-week trips in the Boston area. They took a commercial bus. They actually started in Montclair. They didn't even come to Frost Valley, the bike trips. We had an office in Montclair, New Jersey. It was like just a house with a basement and an attic, 4 floors altogether. And they would meet there, and then they'd take a commercial bus right up to the Boston area. There were like almost 40-some kids, 48 kids on the bus. They would split up into 4 groups. 2 groups would go north of Boston, up along the Maine coast, through New Hampshire, up to Maine. And the other 2 would go south and end up somewhere down in Rhode Island. So the bike trips, they really took off. We had a lot of bikers. So I remember one day, I used to work in the Montclair office. I'd spend half the week down there sometimes and the other half up here at Frost Valley. But I do remember there was one time when I came downstairs to the office area, And there were kids from the bike trip. They were sleeping on the desks, on the floor. They were all over the place. So that was like in the 70s, mid 70s. So the trips really took off.
Wow. And was Adventure Village happening at the same time as all of this? Like, when did Sequoia and Woodwise start?
Well, let me just point out my very last trip.
Yeah.
Because I'm very proud of what the kids did. In 1973 was my last trip. I was Adventure Camp Director through the 70s, but my last trip where I actually directed the trip. I created a trip called the Wilderness Seekers, and it was a 4-week trip. There were 2 4-week trips during the summer, and the object of the trip was to do the 46 peaks in the Adirondacks. And I had 12, 13, and 14-year-old boys, and these were kids that during the Adirondack Explorer trips in 1971 and 1972, these kids were hand-picked. The program was not even advertised, and every single boy that I invited went, signed up for the trip. And there were the 2 trips. So I had 9 boys on the 1 trip and 9 boys on the 2nd trip. 1 trip in July, 1 trip in August. And we did all 46 peaks, as well as 7 non-46 peaks, little peaks. And the first trip did them in 16 days. And the second trip we did them in 18 days.
Wow.
And I was very, very proud of that particular group.
Wow.
So anyway, you asked me about Adventure Village.
Yes.
There was a man named John Ledley who was camp director. And in 1935, he developed the concept of breaking the boys up into villages.
Okay.
Prior to that, you'd have one long string of tents. There were like 30 tents in Andover, New Jersey. We were in Andover at one point. And it was just one big, huge, didn't matter what age they were, it was just the same age in a given tent. It was the same age boys.
Okay.
But they were just no particular order, just one long string of tents. So anyway, John Ledley created the village concept where you would have 5 cabins to a village. So you would have your cabin activities, and now you've got your village activities where you would have activities that were age appropriate. The boys would be maybe a 1-year gap in age throughout the entire village. So I suspect that happened in 1935. It was called the Pioneer Village back then. And the big trips were to come up to the Catskills and climb Slide Mountain. That was one of the big trips. Another was to go canoeing down the Delaware River. So they would do like 3 or 4 day trips, just like pretty much like our Adventure Village does now.
Yeah.
So that hasn't changed too much. I could be wrong in 1935, but it was sometime in Andover, because the Pioneer Village was definitely there in Andover, New Jersey. So that's essentially what Adventure Camp was. We had other names for it when we were in this location here at Frost Valley. So that's pretty much when it started.
And are there any other significant milestones in kind of adventure department history that you've seen throughout your time here?
Well, we've had a lot of different trips. I was Adventure Camp Director until 1979, and every year we have new trips. So I can't think of anything of great significance other than it expanded a lot.
Wow. And we did international trips at one point, right?
Yes, that's true. I know we had trips to Japan.
Wow.
I wasn't too much in charge of those trips.
Yeah.
So I don't remember specifically where they went. But we did get into some international trips.
That's awesome. And I've heard from a lot of campers who are really sad that they're not able to be here this summer, especially adventure campers. Is there anything you would say to them or any advice you'd give to them to find adventure on their own this summer?
Well, just do a lot of biking, do a lot of hiking. If you can get up to the Catskill area or the Adirondack area, with your family or friends, do so, and just keep enjoying the wilderness. So I try very hard to continue to get up into the Adirondack area. I like it up there a lot. Go to a lot of my favorite places. So just keep plugging along.
Great.